All right, today we're going to go through how we at Genero think about growing your e-commerce businesses, how we specifically think about our methodology and philosophy, and our processes and tools that help you achieve where you want to go. Specifically, we're quite invested in maximizing profitability, either in the short or in the long term, but basically setting up systems so you can achieve this and also keep track so you're doing the right thing and focusing on things that matter. So if we look at what has happened in the market for the last couple of years, we can see that things have shifted pretty dramatically from very much focusing on maximizing revenue and growing top line. Probably because capital was so easy to get access to and people were investing in marketing and generating new customers, hoping that this will turn into profitability later on. Some instances this turned out great. In other instances, it turned out that these customers that they acquired were not as profitable long-term as they were hoping. And we have some pretty dramatic falling out of grace stories here as well. Our goal has always been to work pretty closely with the business and maximize the business impact of the marketing operations. So we've been for quite a few years now really been leaning into this profit angle, making sure that we keep track of it, making sure that we optimize for it in some instances as well. But I think this is especially now as the markets are more challenging, it has become much more important. So I think one way to visualize this is to look through how revenue flows through the organization. We can see that obviously there's a lot of costs associated with shipping the product, with buying or producing the product yourself, and also with selling the product. And in some instances, we've seen actually that businesses have done suboptimal decisions in the way that they actually focused on revenue to the detriment of the profit. So this is why we want to ensure that even if the short-term goal is to grow revenue, we need to keep track of that, of these costs as well. Keep track of contribution margin or GM3 as it's called in technical terms, meaning the profit after the variable costs. So this makes sure that even if we're interested in growing rapidly, growing top-line revenue, growing by acquiring new customers, we keep track of those profit margins and the different costs so that we don't make suboptimal decisions. When we work with clients, we like to take a pretty wide scope, meaning that we want to take responsibility for not just generating new customers, but doing so profitably. And this ensures that the amount of profit that's left over to pay for fixed cost, and then after that, obviously, you have the bottom line. So this is a better approach in our view. I think this is one pretty common example that we see with working with different clients, how without keeping track of the right things, it's pretty easy to have the wrong diagnosis and also, of course, then the wrong solution. This is a pretty common scenario that we see that a business is behind its sales targets and then decide to put a pretty hefty discount on the product to drive more revenue and get closer to that sales targets. Pretty common approach. But unfortunately, while this in the short term has a pretty quick and effective revenue boost, there's a lot of long-term issues here with basically both giving away free margin, teaching the customers that they should wait for a discount instead of buying a full price. That long-term deterioration of the full price, meaning that no one is going to buy a full price because they know that it's an illusion. They at least feel that it's an illusion, that no one, since you're always on sale. This is a more advanced, but I think more proper way of analyzing the situation, diagnosing the problem, and having specific relevant actions related to the problem that are focused on actually solving the solution. So let's say we have the same scenarios as we had before. We're falling behind our sales targets for any given month. We start to discuss if we should do a site-wide discount, which would be sort of the most common sort of reactive approach. Then we start to look at how much would we actually need to sell, not sell more, not just to get to our sales target, but to actually counter the loss of margin that the discount gives us. Obviously, when we give away a discount, we're also giving away margins. We need to sell more to account for this margin loss, just to be on the same level. We would also want to take a look at how historically sales are affected by discounting. So let's say it's probably quite likely that we'll sell more products, more orders with a 50% discount than we would with a 10. So we would look at this relationship and see how much do we need, like what is the sweet spot when it comes to specifically discounting. We would also consider how much inventory we have, how much, if there's a need to turn certain products into cash, and also if there are products that are expected to sell on their own and we don't want to or need to sell them. We can even go as far as to evaluate if there are expected reactions by competitors, if we're just pushing the price down and sort of helping the industry or helping the market rather compete all the margin away. And a specific action coming from this type of analysis could be that we see a smaller discount on very specific part of the inventory, products that are slow moving, that let's say we have too much in inventory, could be a good way of getting closer to our sales target, but also helping turn slow moving inventory into cash. And this would be the best way, not just to sell more, but more importantly, to maximize the margin, the gross margin that we get in euros or dollars, and also help with optimizing cash flow. So I think for most businesses, this type of analysis is quite far from how they're working day to day, and it's quite a challenge to get to, to get to this type of approach. But we want to help with pushing those limits, making sure that we increase both the way that we measure and think about optimizing the business for what we actually want to achieve. Is it just sales, or what are we actually trying to achieve? So now we're going to jump to our growth strategy service, which is a product we call a growth canvas. It was a few different parts, but basically this is about setting the stage and making sure that the conditions are right for achieving, for getting to where we want to get. It all starts with looking at the goals. Like, what are you actually trying to achieve with the business? Is the goal an exit in 5 years? The things that you're looking to maximize within that period might look quite different compared to if you want to have a scenario where you have a lifestyle business and are being able to pay yourself a nice dividend over the coming years. Growth simulation is about forecasting, setting reasonable expectations of the future towards to which we can compare the actual results and the targets. From the growth simulation, we then get a specific diagnosis of what things are going well, what things are not going well, and based on this, what are the levers that we want to push to get to where we're going. This is all about diagnosing the right things and not just choosing actions randomly. This part also involves an assessment, a digital assessment of your store, of your current operations, of your advertising, etc. Just make sure that things are up to standard. If there are any quite clear bottlenecks that we can fix pretty easily, we do, we recommend that as well. We also take a look at communication to go through that whole part of discussing what is the branding, what is the positioning, what is the tone of voice that you're going for. How do you want to communicate? And this helps in the daily operations with creating advertising, with creating content, just making sure that we're on the same page with these things and have thought them through. So jumping into the details then. Like I said, we start with discussing your goals. What are you actually trying to achieve financially with the business? After this, we go through a process that we call growth simulation, which is basically a systematic way of forecasting the future. And now we're specifically going to go through that product. So go through the simulation, how that process is done, and what the outcome is. This is all about making sure that you have a good systematic way to predict or to set reasonable expectations for how the coming months are going to look. This is not about trying to perfectly predict the future, but this is a tool to help you plan for the coming months, to set budgets, to know how realistic your targets are, etc. So this is on a pretty detailed level how the forecast modeling process or how it looks. So what we do here is that we layer on different types of forecasts. The first model is a model for customer acquisition, which is quite closely tied to the paid advertising. So looking at the relationship between spend and other variables and customers acquired. And then we layer on a returning customer forecast, look at every cohort, which is cohort based, which means that we're trying to predict based on when a customer was acquired, based on how long ago it was, based on which month it is now, like what is the expected revenue from all the existing customers. Where we think it's very likely the future is going to be different from the past, then we manually correct, which is the third and final layer. So for example, we could say that for the last couple of years, in May, we ran out of inventory. We think we could have sold more, but this was the reason, and it was nothing to do with demand. So this is something that we could add to the forecast and manually adjust to say, okay, we believe we have a reasonable expectation of selling more than just the historical data would tell us. And what this does is it sets expectations for the coming period. It's not, like I said, we're not trying to perfectly predict the future. We're just saying what is most likely to happen based on historical performance. And we get this even to a P&L level. We then compare this to the actual target, so what we're hoping for. And the goal is always to break the model, to be better, to perform better than the expectation. Get from what is likely to happen to what we want to happen. And for this, usually there are things that need to be improved. And since we get this broken down on a pretty detailed level, we can quite clearly diagnose problems. So this is just an example. We could see that the new customer revenue is performing better than expected, but it's the returning side of things and the existing customers that are not performing as well. So in this example, we could look at a specific cohort of customers. Here in this example, it's based on the year that the customer was acquired. And we can see that in this instance, in 2023, the customers are quite clearly underperforming. So we can then dive even deeper and look at specific products, etc. Like what is the reason why these customers are not performing as well? And in a lot of cases, it's, for example, product-based. And this is where the levers come in. Based on the diagnosis of diving deeper of where the actual problem is, we then have levers that we can pull to get to our targets. Obviously, a lot of these are related to sort of classic or standard digital marketing actions, email, media buying, new content, etc. We also want to be involved in the discussions when it comes to more fundamental things such as pricing, shipping, returns. It could be like about changing the threshold for free shipping. We also could take a look at the website and see if there are specific bottlenecks that are in the way of us achieving our goals. But it's a more systematic way of actually diagnosing the problem and having solutions and actions that drive from the bottlenecks. So just really quick, going to show you what we get then. We get a P&L level forecast that we can then compare to the budget. But this is pretty detailed and something that we go through with each client to see like where are there large discrepancies. And one interesting thing here as well is that we, as we close a month, any given month, this is going to affect the rest of the year's forecast. So we're not working with one static 12-month forecast. Rather, the forecast is updating as we get in the actual data, and it's going to change the expected performance for the rest of the month. This is going to take quite a while, but as I check the box, this is going to turn into actual numbers, and the rest of the year is going to change into, it's going to update the forecast here as well. Creating a forecast is all well and good, especially if it's trustworthy, but it's more important on how we actually react, how we use that information day to day, week to week, month to make decisions, and to change, to react to a changing environment. So here is the main dashboard that we follow. And a few things that I wanted to highlight here specifically is, firstly, we focus mostly on GM3, meaning the profit after the variable cost. This is our main goal that we're trying to optimize for in most cases. We get this on a daily level, so we can react very quickly. We also get versus the expectations, meaning the growth simulation that I just mentioned, and also versus the targets. And again, this is the gap that we're trying to bridge. We want to improve improve on the we want to improve on the expected outcome and get to the target outcome. Just an example of what we get here, we get revenue broken down by new customers and returning customers. We can quite clearly see here that while returning customers are outperforming the expectations, customer acquisition is actually behind. And since this is now broken down between volume and efficiency, we can also diagnose if it's a matter of, are we just not seeing enough revenue, or is it that the efficiency is not high enough, meaning that for every euro or every dollar that we spend, we don't get enough back. But looking at acquisition ROAS, since that new customers was the bottleneck, we can see that we actually get enough back for every euro that we put. So in this instance, it's just a matter of spending more to get closer to our targets. Jumping forward, we can see here what the gross margin looks like on a per order basis. So we see for each order on average, how much do we pay for inventory? How much is the purchasing price in this instance? Since this example is a multi-brand store. See how much we pay for fulfillment, how much is on ad spend, and then finally, what is the gross margin 3 or the contribution margin? We can then jump into acquisition. Since in this example, it was the bottleneck, we can see the new customer revenue versus the expected. We can see that we're behind the expected outcome, and we have in fact been spending less than our plan. But the ROAS on acquisition, meaning the new customer revenue divided by all the advertising spend, is actually above targets. So we're quite efficient. We could spend more and should spend more to get closer to our targets. We can see that the conversion rate is a bit over target, which is good, but the average order value is actually below. And here there are levers that we can pull to think about what types of products should we start to advertise more to get closer, or to raise this if we decide that it's a bottleneck. But here we're quite close to the expected outcome, so nothing dramatic here. And here we get new customer revenue versus expectations. We get the acquisition ROAS versus expectations. And then jumping next into retention, even though for this specific instance it wasn't a large issue, we can see that we're quite comfortably above the expectations when it comes to returning revenue. And here it's likely that if things are working well, we could push this even more. Is it emails? Is it certain product launches that are taking this that means we are above targets. Looking at this graph, we can see there are specific days where we are really outperforming the forecast, and this is driving up the performance on a monthly basis. So here we should take a look at other specific email campaigns, other specific product launches, etc., that we could do more of. We also look at the lifetime value lift over 3 months. So we see whenever a customer is acquired, how much does that customer purchase for in the coming 3 months. And this is quite a key part of the modeling of returning customers. And we can even break down the returning customer forecast to a cohort level, meaning that we can see how much of the revenue is expected to come from the different cohorts of when the customers was acquired. So we can see that the most recent years are dominating, meaning that most of the revenue that we expect to get from existing customers, returning customers in May, will be coming from customers that were acquired in the last 4 years. But here we can also dive even deeper and compare the expectations to the different products, for example, that were advertised or launched during this period of time. We can look at which products have performed best when it comes to actually getting that retention and keeping customers coming back.